Josh and I have had a long relationship, meeting years and years ago, as he and I were both working in a summer leadership conference. Oh, I don't know, 17, 18 years ago. And we became fast friends, and I have seen Josh go from here to there. He has seen me go from here to there. We call each other, we talk, we bounce ideas off each other all the time. But tonight, y'all, I'm so proud of this man who is a husband, who is a father, who is an educator, who is educated, obtaining his doctorate in ed leadership. What is it now? Almost 2 years ago, the founder and visionary of a company called Vision XY, that of course he birthed and launched the Circle of Change Leadership Conference, that has grown to be a huge success, touching, inspiring, educating, and preparing first generation students, college students, for their leadership development in their workforce and beyond. He is an author, he is an orator, and he is my friend and yours. Y'all, start the love fest right now. Start clapping in your homes, in your offices, in your cars, wherever you are. Give it up. Let me introduce to some and present to other, Dr. Joshua Fredenburg.
Awesome, Tish. What's up, Tish? It's so good to be here, getting the groove on. Yeah. Man, so good to be here, Tish. I want first and foremost, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to host this virtual book launch tonight. I mean, if there's any MC moderator in the world, I said I got to have Tish Norman from the ATL to represent. Thank you so much. Also want to give a shout out to all the people in the chat room. I see your names. I see all the wonderful people. I see my daughter Rachel out there and out there as well. So I just want to give a shout out to all the people. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It really means a lot to me, and I just appreciate it so much. And I see everyone there. So I just want to let y'all know I'm so appreciative and so excited about today, not only about the birthday, but about the book launch, about the love, about the excitement. And again, as Tish said, we will have a gift for everyone at the end. So definitely want to make that clear as well. But I'm just happy to be here today, Tish. And I just want to just thank everyone for taking time out of your schedule to be here today. You didn't have to be here, but you did on a Monday night. And I am so appreciative. I'm so grateful. And more importantly, I hope that you are empowered and blessed by this wonderful conversation. So T.I., and also shout out to Michael, DJ Wally, always doing it like it's the best. Tish, it's all good. I'm good to be here, man. Let's go. Let's go.
Listen, Josh, let me tell you something. I spent 15 years in Los Angeles, and one of my best birthday parties was on a Monday night. So never, ever underestimate the power that a Monday night can bring.
Come on.
Listen, let's get into this conversation. And I want to say, hey, Rachel, that's Auntie Tish. I didn't even realize Rachel Fredenburg was your baby. My brain hasn't caught up yet. But this is the new piece right here, everybody. R.E.D Leadership. It is hot off the presses. This is my own exclusive copy right now. And I have thumbed through it and I have gleaned some inspiration. Josh, this is not your first book. This is your 7th book. Tell me where this motivation came from. Everybody needs to know it doesn't take 3 weeks to write a book. It takes quite a long time. You have to think about it. You have to prepare. You have to research. Why R.E.D Leadership?
Yeah, so I want to just really quickly, why did I write the book, right? Let me just go back. When I was a sophomore in college, before I even started college, I had to take what I call a remedial English class. They felt that my writing wasn't even up to par to even go to college in general. And then I remember it was my junior year, one of my professors said, your writing is not good enough for you even to get a master's or a doctoral degree. So this is 7 books from someone where they were told their writing wasn't good enough for the collegiate level. And then a professor said, your writing's not good enough to attain a master's or a doctoral degree. And not only did I prove him wrong there, but I wrote 7 books. And so I just want to be an inspiration to someone tonight. If you've had someone tell you that you'll never amount to nothing, tell you you can't do nothing, just let my life be a testimony that despite what they say, if you work hard, if you stay focused, anything is possible. Now, as relate to this book, Tish, I was in my doctoral journey. And on this doctoral journey, it was during when we were about the fifth year of the Circle of Change Leadership Conference. And one of the things that I discovered really quickly is we would have hundreds of college students, and they would be excited, they would be motivated, and we'd say, we're looking for volunteers, we're looking for interns, people that want to be part of our campus ambassador program. And literally 40 and 50 people would sign up. And after about 3 to 4 months, people would go ghost. They'd be nowhere to be found. We'd have about 25% of people left. And I was like, what in the world is going on? Like people are so excited and then they just go ghost. And so during this time I was getting my doctoral degree, I had to do a dissertation on the impact of transformational leadership on retention. And I said, man, this will be a good time for me to use my dissertation to figure out what in the world is going on. And so I began to do my research and I began to go through that process of writing a dissertation. By the way, that took me 3+ years. And I was just writing this and I was doing my research. I realized I was not the only one with the problem. I realized there were companies and organizations that were scratching their heads dealing with the same issue as far as how do we retain individuals of the millennial generation? Because for whatever reason, people were not down with staying in the job for 30+ years anymore. They had different demands, they had different needs, and they made up in their minds that, you know what, if you're not going to give me what I need, I will move on somewhere else, and I will go somewhere else where they will take my talents. That's just like LeBron James. I'm taking my talents from Cleveland to Miami, but he did come back. But ultimately, that's how this generation. I know, Tish. I know. But this is what I was discovering. And so I began to do research and I began to understand there was a problem. And so now what I realize is not only can I solve my problem, but I can be a problem, I can be a solution to many organizations and many companies as well. And so I began to focus my attention on not only solving the current problem, but how can I solve the problem at large? But as we fast forward and I begin to learn some things about retention, I also begin to realize another major issue. And the issue was there was a lack of retention engagement with culturally diverse millennials as well. Okay. When I use the word culturally diverse, I'm dealing with people of color. People use several different terms, but I was hearing all these stories about there were professionals of color in different companies, and they were upset because ultimately leadership wasn't doing their job, not only providing opportunity and access, but ultimately allowing them to be in a place where they can thrive and they can succeed. And what I realized is that affects retention. So now, Tish, there were two things that came forth. The first thing was this: I wanted to be part of the solution to a problem that companies are facing today. Number two, because my parents are African American, I wanted to be that person that helped my people that are going through challenging situations right now. And the best way that I can do that is if I can help leaders be better at leading diverse groups of people from different cultural backgrounds, then ultimately not only is it going to benefit the leader, but here it comes, Tish. Most importantly, it's going to benefit the person that's working with the leader. I'm sure if we went right now, I said, I want everyone to raise their hand. How many of you have ever had a bad boss? I guarantee you, 80% of people on this webinar, on this virtual class would raise their hand right now because we've all experienced it. And then if I said, if you ever had a good boss, raise your hand, and some people would raise their hand. And you will recognize that you perform better when you have good leadership versus bad leadership. So ultimately, when we empower leaders, ultimately we're empowering people and we're positioning them for success. So in a nutshell, Tish, that's one of the reasons why I created this book, is because not only I want to solve problems, but I want to help people become better leaders, and I want to create a resource where people could be under better leadership. I hope I answered the question, Tish, but we went on a journey, but that's really what the whole purpose of the book.
That's fantastic, because what you guys just saw a little bit, what you just heard rather, is a snippet of how dense this book is with information, right? Josh just took quite a few minutes to delve deep into answering literally his motivation behind writing this book. And here that actually leads me to my next question, because I'm a practical person, right? I'm a pragmatic, practical, lay it out for me easy. I'm not sure how you like to read, be engaged, and learn. But Josh has broken his book down into three key sections. Tell us about those three key sections, Josh, and then I got a quick question about the first one.
Awesome. So the book is broken down into three sections. The first section is retention. How do you retain members of the millennial and Gen Z generation? And I'm
Mhm.
gonna let Tish have some questions because man, I can stay there all night. The second one is engagement. How do you engage people from different cultural backgrounds? And that's how do you motivate? How do you position people for success? How do you get them excited about coming to the office every single day? And the last one, this is my bread and butter, leadership. What do we need to do to develop the next generation of leaders? And I'm gonna, as we get into it, Tish, I'm gonna start to give some things that I was able to discover in this journey of how we can be better in these three organizations. But those are ultimately the three areas, and that's why it's called R.E.D leadership: retention, engagement, and development of leaders.
All right, so let's get into the retention. The first section of the book, and what I want everybody to know is when you grab this book, Dr. J puts different questions, different prompts for you to be able to engage your audience in, or to engage your ERG, or to engage your group that you advise or that you counsel. And so he talks basically about how um, retention is the byproduct of the motivated.
Mm.
You have to be motivated. Dr. J, talk about intrinsic motivation. You cover in the book about how you develop one's internal motivation, or how one develops their own internal motivation. How do we motivate the unmotivated?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question, Tish. And that was actually one of my first questions or my first points that I talk about in the book is the position in alignment with the motivation of the individual? Simon Sinek has a great concept. He talks about the why. There's those that talk about purpose. And so when I define purpose, I call it the passionate reason why you do what you do. And if we're going to engage, if we're going to motivate, we want to make sure that the passion or the why of those that work for us is actually in alignment with what they are doing. So many times, one of the things that I discovered is that people will have jobs, people will join organizations, or people even volunteer, and they're doing it just because they're there to do it, but they're not actually passionate, or their why is not even in alignment with what they're doing. And so what ultimately happens is they'll volunteer and they'll participate, but they won't go the extra mile. They won't give you 110%. They'll never reach greatness, because in order to reach greatness, you got to be grounded in what I call that why, or the passionate reason why you do what you do. And so when we deal with retention, as you all know, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be moments when you're ready to give up. And so if my why is in alignment with what I am doing, it's going to give me more motivation to continue to push forward. It's going to give me more motivation to continue to do what I can in order to do my level at a high level. And what's so fascinating about this truth is when I was doing my research, there's actually they call a survey that they do, and it's for volunteers. And what the researchers do is they encourage people that before someone volunteers, have them do this volunteer assessment. And the purpose of the assessment is to identify, why do you want to volunteer for the organization? Why do you want to be part of this organization that is serving the community? And there's 7 different areas. And what they discovered is this. They discovered when the motivation is in alignment with the work, they found that people are more likely to stay longer than others. And so what I've discovered is this: from a recruitment standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, if I can put people in the place where they are motivated, where they are passionate, or it's aligned with their why, there's a good chance they're going to stay longer, they're going to give more than someone that who is not. And so what I encourage leaders to do, and again, myself included, is I encourage them to have conversations and ask, what is your passion? Why do you want this position? Why do you want to serve? Why does it matter? And not only that, have them write it down, so that when they get in that tough moment and they're ready to throw in the towel or they're ready to give up, you can take them back to that place, take them back to that motivation. And what I have found, it may not work all the time, but most of the time it will enable people to continue to push forward, to continue to stay motivated, and continue to give the best that they can become. So many times we lack motivation because we have not identified our why or intrinsic in motivation on the inside. And so this is the first concept that I talk about when it comes to R.E.D leadership, primarily when it deals with retention, Tish. That's the first thing I like to talk about.
I love it. As you're sitting there answering, I'm reading, I'm reading, I'm listening. I'm reading, I'm listening. I kind of toggling back and forth between the two because R.E.D leadership definitely answers a question. It answers a need right now.
Yeah.
If you are in higher ed or even dealing with employee motivation, you're going to hear, or employee morale, you're going to hear words like retention, engagement, and development. And so that just reiterates how on time a work like this is. I want to pose this question right here because Dr. J makes sure that not only questions are involved, but he leaves you with strategies. He
Mm-hmm.
leaves you with how to's. It's the information, but then how do we apply the information? How about
Absolutely.
this one? What are some coaches, mentors, and accountability partners that you can reach out to around assisting your young emerging leaders in growing their strengths and or talents? Where can advisors or those who are in charge of developing young people reach out and find coaches and mentors for their team?
No, that's great. And I want to. I'm gonna start somewhere else. I'm gonna come back to that question. I want to begin here. When I did my dissertation, my thought was that leadership affects retention. I thought in my mindset that if you're gonna have retention, you got to be an effective leader. This is what I learned. What I learned is leadership absolutely matters. As a matter of fact, there is a style of leadership, a couple of style of leadership that is conducive to retention. But what I also found is you can be an exceptional leader, but if there's certain areas that you don't pay attention to, then you're still going to have a retention issue. It's one of the reasons I talk about 5 retention strategies versus 1. And one of those strategies is, do you have a support system? One of the things that I discovered in my research is having a support system is incredibly important as it relates to retention. Now, when I deal with the support system, number one, we got to deal with the onboarding. Onboarding is so incredibly important. How are you bringing people into the organization? Now, during the onboarding experience, there's several different unique ways in which people do this. Some people have 1 to 2 days. Some people have 6 months. Some people even have a year. But onboarding is so incredibly important because research shows if your onboarding is not up to par, it affects engagement and it affects retention. I saw one say that went so far to say, if there's no onboarding, you can expect people to leave, you can expect turnover. So we got to have onboarding. But the second part of that is what I call an inclusive culture. Now, again, we'll talk about that later, but the culture has to present what I call a sense of belonging. People have a voice, people feel valued, people feel appreciated, their security, their safety in the culture. But in Tish's point, we're dealing with mentors, also another concept of sponsors. People need mentors. People need people that are not only going to show the way, but are willing to reach out and pull people to that next level. We just came off our Circular Change first generation career conference, and one of my good friends, Roger, said something really powerful. He said, the glass ceiling is never going to break. He said, the way that people get through the glass ceiling is when you reach down and you pull somebody up. And to me, that's a sponsor. That's someone that goes behind closed doors, that advocates, and that is doing their best to advocate for those that may not be in a position that they have the potential and they have the expertise in order to sit in. But more importantly, from an individual standpoint, how do I find a mentor? Well, there's several different ways. Number one, you don't have to have a conversation, have a mentor. You can read a book and be mentored. You can watch YouTube and be mentored. You can actually be a part of an organization and just watch someone's behaviors, watch what they do, and actually be mentored. But to go a step farther, I think mentorship is more of an organic thing. It's more of about building relationships. And so I think it just happens organically. I think it's just through being, first of all, a nice person and just wanting to get to know people, wanting to build relationships, being curious, not being afraid of stepping out your comfort zone and just talking to someone. Maybe that person that's a vice president, reach out and ask for an informational. Maybe it's someone you work with. Let's go to lunch together. I think mentorship is made more challenging than what it is. I think there are brilliant people all around us. I mean, right now we have about 38 to 40 people on this call, right on this virtual book launch right now. And we have incredible minds here right now. I mean, literally, we have some people here that are brilliant, that are amazing. If you just reached out to someone here and had a conversation, you can develop mentorship, peer mentorship. And so I just encourage people, number one, to have tons of mentors. Number two, build relationships and let the mentorship organically create. And if you're an organizational leader, then I think it's your responsibility when you're bringing people in to not only look for people to mentor, connect people with those that can help them go to the next level. And I think this is so important when it comes to retention, because the worst thing is to come to a new job, to come to a new organization and not know anyone, and no one reaches out to you. No one wants to help you, let alone, we're not even talking about the microaggressions. We're not talking about the unconscious biases. We're not even talking about all that could exist in the organization. Just people having hospitality and just helping you and just being nice and being friendly. That's how things grow. That's how things become better. And so that's my response to that question, Tish. Number one, absolutely, we need mentors. Absolutely, we should understand how to integrate coaching techniques into leadership. But ultimately, does an individual have a support system in place when they walk on your campus or when they become a part of your organization?
So, what it sounds like I'm hearing you say is that the people onboarding, the people who are in these leadership positions who are molding the emerging leading population or emerging leaders need to make sure that they have someone to maybe partner that new hire with, or to
Right.
partner that incoming freshman with, or partner that first gen with. Because a mentor or someone that can support you along the way is not going to just be there in the beginning and fade out. They're going to
Right.
be there through your leadership development, and that'll be someone that you could lean on. And I love always when you say, Josh, the onboarding is critical because that's the early intervention, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Yeah.
early intervention. And so whether you're a recent graduate and you're going to college, or you're a recent new hire starting at a new company, not only is it good to see a familiar face, and this is specifically for my BIPOC population,
Mm-hmm.
but Dr. J gave some special tools there. Matter of fact, before we move on to our engagement session,
Uh-huh.
give me two takeaways from that first part of the book, retention. Give me two takeaways.
The first takeaway is this, and I was going to share it later, but I'll share it now. When it deals with leadership, again, I said there's two leadership styles that affect retention, specifically with millennials, and I believe Gen Z as well. The first is transformational leadership. Studies have shown, my study has shown, that transformational leadership has a direct impact on retention. So if you're going to increase your retention, you're going to have to teach your leaders how to lead with what I call the transformational leadership style. The other one is servant leadership. And again, that's a whole nother conversation itself. But those are two leadership styles that truly make an impact. The second thing I want to say is communication. Oh my gosh. Communication is so incredibly important. If you're going to retain people, you have to be a master communicator, especially when we deal with the millennial generation, because again, research shows this. Feedback is so vitally important. It's not enough to give a command without being able to explain exactly what you're talking about. So when we're dealing with the millennial generation or even Gen Z, it's important that not only are you giving clear communication, clear directions, but you're available to give feedback. You're available to coach. You're available just to have a conversation for 30 minutes and just one-on-one talk with someone and help people through things. You know, one of the things that I've discovered as a leader, and I hope to integrate this as I grow and have more influence in the areas of expertise, is really scheduling 1 hour a day just to talk to someone new within your organization. Again, I know we have busy schedules. I know that we do so much, but as a vice president, as a CEO, as a director, or even just as an organizational leader, taking 1 hour per day to talk to one person is so powerful. It's so impactful. And it's not only going to help your team, but more importantly, it's going to help you as well. And if you look at a 12-month year, imagine this: 20 meetings per month, times that by 12, you're reaching about 200 to 300 people in these personal conversations. And you will be amazed at how impactful these conversations will be, not only at communicating your heart, communicating your vision, communicating what you want, but more importantly, being available to answer the questions, the concerns, and also just listening to what other people have to say. So I want to share those 2 points, Tish.
Fantastic. It's fantastic. I love it. Let's move on. Are y'all still with us? If you're still with us, somebody type red in the chat right now. Type in red in the chat. Yes. Listen, everybody. That's what I'm talking about. So
I
we
love
have
it.
what? R. That is our retention. Dr. J, let's swiftly move on into engagement,
Yeah.
right? I think
Mhm.
that is so critical in
Yeah.
any organization, if it's corporate, if it's collegiate, if it's classroom or community.
Yeah.
Any type of leader wants their team engaged.
Yeah.
And trust me, the team wants to be engaged as well. What is your, let's unpack this. What is your definition, your perspective as you write on inclusive leadership? Because that's very broad, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
try to funnel it a little bit. Inclusive leadership. Introduce that to somebody tonight.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tish. And that's a loaded question, right? So let me just define leadership. So I define leadership as an ability to influence people to a certain destination. So leaders have three things. Number one, they have an ability to influence, to persuade, to inspire. Number two, they have vision. There's a clear picture of where they're going. And then number three, it's to make an impact. I say it all the time: leaders make others around them better, and leaders make the organization better. So that's my definition of leadership. Now we deal with inclusion. Now this is a power packed word. So when I deal with inclusion, number one, it begins with valuing people. It begins with appreciating people. It begins with respecting people. It begins with loving people, with caring about people, with seeing the best in people, and then allowing them to have a voice, allowing them to be authentic to who they are, allowing them to bring their voice, their collaboration, or their insight into the entire vision that you created. So when I deal with this concept of inclusive leadership, it's not only about the ability to influence to a certain destination to make an impact, but it's ultimately allowing others to share in the experience with you and be them or be their authentic self in order to help you to make the vision a reality and ultimately to make an impact. In essence, as a leader, not only am I here telling you what to do, but I'm listening to you. I'm collaborative. I want the best for you. I'm putting you in position to win. I'm listening to you. I'm encouraging you. I'm allowing you to be your authentic self. And whether I agree with you or not, I still love you for being who you are. And I'm creating an environment where collectively we can work together to make an impact. Because this is what I've realized. I've learned this to be true. Sometimes when you're part of the right culture, that in itself can transform your life. Ooh, I got in something now. Just being in the right culture, just being in the right environment can transform your life. I'll prove it to you. If you looked over your life, I'm sure you can point out moments where it was where you were with a group of your friends, it was you were with your family, you were in an organization, you were on a project, and just being there provided you inspiration, provided you growth, provided you elevation just by being in that presence. And so
Absolutely.
I think about inclusive leadership. Not only are we getting the job done, but we're creating a space where other people can share with us and
Yeah.
feel empowered just by the process of doing what is required from a leadership standpoint. I know it's a lot, Tish, but I hope I was able to unpack it to the best of my ability as you brought that question to me.
No, absolutely. It's so critical because inclusive leadership is a hot topic now.
Yeah.
Inclusive leadership These are some of the words that we hear in all of these various spaces that we occupy, if it's professional or even personal,
Yeah.
as well as far as an organizational dynamic.
Mhm.
Inclusivity is something that is driving the conversation now, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what else is driving the conversation? Implicit bias,
Yeah.
microaggressions,
Mhm.
equity, access,
Mhm.
justice, social justice. All of these things are at the forefront of our conversations right now. How does red leadership fit into that conversation?
Yeah, Tish, this is your expertise because you dig deeper into biases. This is your lane right here. But let me
Hey,
say
I'm coming from the book.
let me
It's in the book.
yeah, no, I talk about I do. So when I talked about engagement, let me begin here. When I talked about engagement, I was talking about how do you engage culturally diverse professionals, right? And there's so many things to talk about engagement. But I think when we deal with this concept of engagement, it really comes down. Well, one of the things it comes down to is understanding and knowing how to get the most out of those that you serve. And so, one of the things I discovered when it comes to engagement or leadership in general, a lot of leaders fail because they don't have cultural intelligence. We'll talk about that later. They
Mhm.
have no cultural competence. They have no understanding of the cultural background or even the values of people. Therefore, it's difficult for them to motivate or even to put people in positions for them to thrive and to succeed. And it's simply a lack of cultural competence. The
Sure,
more I know people, the
sure,
more I understand people, the more effective I'll be as a leader. Now, integrate into this journey of developing cultural competence and intelligence, we come to this concept of perspective, of implicit bias. I use the word perspective, and the reason I use perspective is because what I've discovered? I've discovered not only do implicit and unconscious biases affect how you lead, how
hmm
you serve,
sure,
your decisions, or
sure,
even how you treat people, but here's
absolutely,
the catch. I've discovered there are experiences, there are values, there are ways of doing things, there are certain mindsets about certain things that can literally have a direct impact on how you lead, how you treat people, or even how you position them for success. And so when we deal with this concept of bias and we deal with this concept of perspective, one
hmm
of the key things that I tell people all the time
hmm
is this is not a one-hit wonder session. And what I mean by that
hmm
is this does not happen overnight. As a matter of fact, this is a lifelong journey. You should
that's right,
consistently
that's right,
be asking yourself the question, is there any perspective? Is there any experience? Is there any unconscious bias that is affecting how I treat people, how I make decisions, or how I lead? Because what I've discovered is in this journey, certain biases, certain experiences or biases you don't even become aware of until the situation actually presents itself. But I want to go a step farther because not only do I encourage people to identify this, to be honest with themselves, and again, you don't got to tell the world about it. This can be an individual decision because you want to get better and you want to treat people better. But I'm going to go a step farther because I think this is so important, Tish. When we deal with perspective, there are certain moments where unconscious biases or experiences could stop us from building relationships with other people.
oh,
In essence,
absolutely,
if we don't have the right perspective about a group of people, if we don't have the right perspective about a certain demographic, if we have that in our mindset, it can present fear. It can present a whole lot of things that stop us from engaging in the conversations that are required in order to build the relationships that are necessary so that we can make things more engaged. This is one of the reasons I always say when people say, I don't want to engage in another diversity training. I don't want to have this tough conversation. And I'm like, if you want to be a better leader, you better get in these conversations because you want honest responses. You want to understand people. Even if you disagree, the more I learn, the more I understand, the more careful that I
sure,
can be with my words
sure,
and with my behavior.
sure,
Listen, I got friends. Man, we completely disagree on certain things. I mean, we completely disagree. But because I care about them, although I disagree with them, I'm willing to make the sacrifice so that they can feel comfortable and we can collectively make an impact. I'm not losing my values. I'm not losing who I am, but I am willing to make adjustments and be hospitable and create an environment where they can feel more comfortable, even when I sometimes don't agree with it. And this is why it's so important that we look within and we identify, are there any biases? Are we building our cultural intelligence, our cultural competence? And again, I can get better. I don't think you never stop learning. I don't, I've been married for 6+ years, and I promise you, I've learned a lot over those 6 years, and I'm still learning, because that's part of leadership. It's when we understand that this thing of diversity and inclusion and engagement, it's not one training that's over. This is a lifestyle. This is a part of who you are to get better every single day, Tish. And I think that's one of the challenges, is I think people assume that it can be solved with one training or one video or one facilitation. No, it's an ongoing process. It should be embedded into your company that we consistently offer training, because it's going to make people better and better.
You all didn't think that you were going to come here tonight and not take home some nuggets, did you? I mean, you didn't think we were just going to say, A and B. You were going to leave here with some information that you can immediately implement
Yeah,
after tonight's over.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Once again, everybody, R.E.D Leadership is the book that we are talking about this afternoon. Can I get me and the book in the same frame? You guys can go right here on the bottom of your screen. If you look, redleadershipbook.com, where you can find a copy for yourself and your colleague. Father's Day is coming up next month. Guess what? Grab one for your dad. Grab one for your uncle, grab one for your colleague at work who's a dad, because the information in this book, and I love how the engagement is right in the middle, like R.E.D, the E engagement is right in the middle. If someone can stand to benefit from this information, grab a copy, just do it. It's hot
Yeah,
off the presses. Today is the official book launch. And so engagement, Josh, I couldn't have said it better.
Tish,
Those
can I say something real
topics,
quick?
and you
Because
answered
I'm
that
gonna.
question. You answered that question perfectly about how it fits into that conversation of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that is the huge umbrella, right? But implicit bias and intercultural competency and social justice work and all of these kinds of things fall under that. And if you want to reflect, see, America is the most diverse it's ever been.
Yeah.
And companies, corporations, colleges alike need to understand that their workforce, their
Mhm.
community needs to reflect that of what we see in the world today. And the best way you can do that is what Dr. J said. If you want your leadership to be advanced, if you want your leadership to be impactful, you have got to take on these broader perspectives so that you are knowledgeable of the people you are leading. Is that a yes or is that a yes?
That's a yes.
Let me do our 2 takeaways now for engagement. We did our 2 takeaways for R.E.D, for retention. Now let's do our 2 takeaways for engagement, right before we move on to the final section of the book, development. Dr. J, what are our 2 takeaways for the audience for engage?
Yeah, Tish, I just got inspired tonight. So here goes my first inspiration that I want to share. No, I did. It just came to me right now. And again, I think when we deal with engagement action plans, I think we need to make sure that we embed cultural competence into the plan. Like, I think it's important that if we're going to engage our staff, if we're going to engage our professional teams, if we're going to engage our workforce, if there is nothing about diversity, inclusion, equity, or really just cultural competence, we have already missed the boat. Because if I lack cultural competence, it's going to be very difficult for me to actually keep people from different backgrounds engaged, specifically multi-ethnic. The second thing I want to share is this, and I share this in the book. When we look at the current demographics, there's four generations primarily in the workplace. Number one is baby boomers, those from 1946 to 1964, determined on whose number you look at. Number two is Generation X, those from 1964 to 1977, again determined on whose numbers you look at. Millennials 77 to 1994, again determined on whose numbers you look at, and then Generation Z 1995 to 2010. So we have four generations in the workplace. Here's the powerful truth as it relates to America. 50% of the demographics in America are either millennials or Gen Z. That means 50% are either born from 1977 to 2015. Secondly, out of those 50% of the US population, almost 50% are from a culturally diverse background. Literally, there was a study in Nielsen, they found that 43% of people that are part of the millennial generation are either Black, Hispanic, or Asian Pacific Islander. With Generation Z, almost 50% comes from a culturally diverse background. Ultimately, what this means is if I'm going to be an effective leader, if I'm going to be effective in general, I got to be effective at dealing with multi-ethnic workforce, because if I don't understand their cultural background, if I don't understand how to connect, at some point it's going to affect me or it's going to affect my organization. And so the 2 points that I want to say is this. Number one, it has to be integrated into our engagement plan of action. And number two, based on the demographics, it's an absolute necessity. It's a necessity. And I want to go a step farther, and I'm going to drop this right here. Here's the challenge, Tish Norman.
Yes.
When I was doing my study, one of the things that I discovered was the original study of the millennial generation took place in Fairfax, Virginia. When you look at the original research, only I believe about 10 to 12% are either Blacks or Hispanics. So out of this research that was created, only 20% were either Blacks or Hispanics. Now, a lot of research, a lot of experts have built off this research. The challenge is when you go to Santa Ana, California, and you have a higher Hispanic population, one of the things that you'll discover is what has been determined in Fairfax does not actually work in Santa Ana, California. Now, this is important because what I think has happened when it relates to retention and engagement with culturally diverse members of the millennial and Gen Z generation is a lot of your experts, I hate to say it, are coming from a dominant culture perspective, the culture that dominates in America. The problem is when most of their sampling consists of a dominant culture, you're missing out on a huge portion of a generation. And so you have leaders, you have experts that are using data based on a sampling that's not actually in alignment with the actually sampling of the generation. So people from a dominant culture are assuming that what works for them will work for the ethnic background. Not the case. And it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate that we need more diversity in the generational conversation. I mean, just think about it for a moment. If you're here and you've ever had someone come talk at your company, your organization, your college about generation in the workforce, my question is, how many times has it been a person of color? I'm going to let that sit right there, Tish, and we can move on.
Hey, listen, don't you start nothing now.
No, it's just a reality, and that's why I think it's so important to be said. Because
Very
anytime someone gives me research, the first thing I do, let me know your sampling. Because I want to know, how did you create your sampling? Because you can't tell me that this is for a certain group of people, but you only had a few amount of people in the study. You can't generalize that. And I think a lot of times we generalize stuff. And the unfortunate thing, Tish, this affects money. This affects sponsorship. This affects opportunity. It affects decisions when it comes to organizational structure. I mean, it's crazy how data affects so much. And so, again, I'm not a data expert, but I do encourage people to really analyze not just the data, but how did you sample, and even the questions that you ask can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Hey, you guys still with us? If you're still with us right now in the chat, right? I am. If you're still with us, because we're rounding the corner, we have some special things coming up as we wrap up this big party tonight, this big book launch. But before we do that, all right, we got Claudia. She says, I am. Tammy says, I am. Hey, David, I am. Hey, Richard. Hey, Aja.
Alice in the house.
Listen, we are talking about R.E.D leadership, retention, engagement, and diversity. I mean, diversity. We could say diversity, but this particular one, we're talking development. That's right, development. We've got 15 strategic keys from this man right here, who has the heart to educate, to develop, to excel, to challenge, and to impact people on a global level. You are tuning in to the official book launch with Dr. Joshua Fredenburg and your host tonight. My name is Tish Norman. Listen, we got to get this last section in, and I
Yeah.
love this part because
Yeah.
we've really kind of talked about the what, right,
Mm-hmm.
Josh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, let's talk about the how.
Yeah.
This one is really important.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about implementation. Let's talk implementation. We have information, but it doesn't do anything if we don't plug it in.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking development. We're talking about actually doing the work.
Yeah.
Can we park there for a minute, Dr. J?
Yep.
Let's talk about development, okay? This idea of organizations, in the corporate boardroom or the college
Mm-hmm.
classroom. Talk about succession planning.
Mm-hmm.
Good leaders leave leadership legacies, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Succession planning is part of that leadership legacy. I always remember what Dr. Miles Monroe said. The test of true leadership is if you're able to uphold the leadership principles in the absence of the leader. So
Yeah.
that's essentially succession planning.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us why that is so critical and why you chose to implement that into this development phase of your book.
Yeah, Tish. Unfortunately, and again, there's a lot of organizations that are failing that we're going to hear about are failing because of a lack of succession planning. Again,
Mhm.
this was new to me, and so I had to do a lot of research. I had to really look into this so I can even be more effective, not only at conveying it, but sharing it with other people. And so when we deal with this concept of succession planning, number one, it deals with identifying potential leaders. And
Mhm.
this is important. In order to identify, we can't be power hungry. We can't be insecure, and we actually got to have a heart to see people grow and bring the most out of people. And I think sometimes it's this insecurity, or it's this power trip, or some of these even our ego that even stops us from really identifying people that are actually qualified for the job. So many times we're picking people based on nepotism, based on you're my friend, based on I like you. Have no qualifications, by the way,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I just like you, versus have I really done an assessment on what are your skill sets, what are your characteristics, and what do you do well. Now, once we identify that, the next step is really to move into what we call training and development. And I do a whole chapter on training and development because one of the things that I've discovered is if we're going to truly develop leaders, if we're going to truly have effective succession planning, we got to have effective leadership development training programs. And I was doing some research and I was so fascinated that I was reading experts that really specialize in this. And one of the things they talked about is they said the models of training are old, and if we're going to be more effective at developing the next generation, we have to make some modifications. This deals with programming. This deals with the integration of technology. But I want to provide a nugget of wisdom that I think is so powerful. When we deal with training, it's not just a lecture or even a training. Again, that's important, that's required, and that's needed. But Tish, there's two other parts of the training that I think sometimes we miss. The first one is coaching. There has to be a coaching part in order for someone to develop as a leader. In essence, there has to be a moment where a person not only is learning, but they're being coached in the information that they're learning. And the third is there has to be experience. There has to be an opportunity where they're actually doing the work. Because what I've discovered is theory is great. Again, my book is great, but it's most powerful when you are able to apply it.
Yeah.
You learn most lessons when you're able to apply it. So
Yep.
when I'm dealing with succession planning, not only am I identifying based on skill sets, not only am I creating what I call 2 to 3 types of leaders that fit a position, but then I develop a training that's not only training and developing them, but ultimately I'm connecting it to experience. I'm connecting it to coaching. And when you have a program where you've identified someone, you've aligned them with a position, and you create a leadership development program where you have the training, you have the coaching, and you have the experience, I am telling you, they're going to transform your organization and your company. But Tish, here's the challenge. How many times have we created top tier leadership development programs for emerging leaders from different multi ethnic groups. How many programs do we have right now in our organization, our companies, that we not only identified you to be talented, but we're creating a program where we're going to develop you, we're going to coach you, and we're going to give you the experience. Here's the question, Tish. Sometimes leaders are not being developed because they're not given the opportunity. I'm going to say it loud again. Sometimes we are not developing leaders because they're not given the opportunities. I'm a speaker. I speak all across the nation. I know speakers that you've never heard of that would blow some of the greatest orators in our country out the water. No disrespect and no shade, but they never had an opportunity. Tish, there's talent. Man, when people say there's no diverse talent, I'm like, where are you looking? There's talented, multi ethnic professionals everywhere. But why are they not getting the positions? Because, Tish, we are not creating the opportunities, the training, or the coaching that is available. Because, Tish, we go back to our engagement piece and we're not culturally intelligent. We have not checked our biases. And then we go back to the retention piece, Tish, and we have not developed a support system that is conducive for anyone, no matter where you're from, to really become a leader of our organization or our company. That's my response, Tish.
I, it's over. Thanks everybody for coming tonight. Listen, you have to move beyond diverse as just a woman or someone young. Mm-hmm. If your company or your organization at the grassroots level, the worker bees, is very diverse ethnically, and you've got BIPOC population there, but as you funnel it up and you go higher and your leadership is white and male and middle age, hello, there's a problem there. We need to get R.E.D leadership so that we can read and unpack why we're diverse at this level. But you're not going to tell me as we funnel, or funnel really is more that way, but as we go up the top tier, the decision makers, the stakeholders, the shareholders are all of one demographic. Yeah. You're not going to tell me, to Josh's point, that there aren't talented, educated, brilliant, experienced people who could be at that same level. So you challenge yourself. Oh, sorry. Understand? Yes, Josh. Come on.
I want to say something. So I want to say, because again, I'm always learning, and I never stop learning. When it comes to, and I like what Hing said, diversity isn't even the bare minimum. That's so right. They actually switch. They say inclusion, diversity first. That's a whole other discussion. But I'm always learning, because again, there's so much to learn about. There's so many different lanes. But I was listening to an executive, Verna Myers from Netflix, and she was talking about the history of I guess they use inclusion, diversity, and belonging. And one of the things they talked about was this concept of equity. And it was really fascinating, because they said we've come a long ways. We talked about diversity, and then we talked about inclusion, and we talked about belonging. But they said the next level is equity. And really, again, I'm not an expert, but equity deals with access, Tish. It's giving everyone equal access. And to me, that's really the conversation now. Are we giving people access? So many times we talk and we share this stuff, but do we have access? Because again, inclusion is important, diversity is important, but if we don't give access and opportunity, nothing else matters. Tish, we can have the most diverse people in the organization. We can increase our diverse numbers. We can even create an inclusion culture. But until we have access, Tish, and opportunity, we will not see people in positions of power and of leadership. We got to have access. And I just want to share that, because I think that's so important to the conversation.
That's right. That's why I don't ever say DE and I. I say DEI and A, or some people say IDEA. So that's inclusion, equity, diversity, and access. Man, I know you all have enjoyed this. Just on a scale of 1 to 10 right now. 1, it just sucked and you would rather be watching paint dry. Or 10, Dr. J blew it out the park. Come on, y'all. Tell us how good of a time you just
Wow.
had over the last few minutes. Uh-oh, we got a 10,000. We got a 10,000, Dr. J.
Yeah.
Okay, Jasmine, I can't even say what number that is. That's what
Awesome.
I'm talking about, everybody. If I had it my way, I would make sure that every corporation across this country and across the world that is making the diversity and equity and inclusion work a priority right now, which should be everyone, I would make sure that you order this book right here at redleadershipbook.com. Grab you a copy and then grab one for your favorite colleague or your next door neighbor or your office mate, because the stuff in this book right here, you need to hear. I need to hear. We all need to hear. And I think, okay, Rachel just gave the largest number of all. And
That's
so,
my daughter
yes,
right there.
we are
That's
so
my
glad
daughter. That's my daughter. Love you, Rachie. That's my
that's
daughter.
right.
That's
We
my
are so
daughter,
glad
man.
that
She's
you
more
have
smarter
been
than me,
able.
Tish. She's more brilliant than me. I mean, she about to take it to a whole nother level. My daughter, woo. That's a
All right, well,
talk
watch out.
about
Watch
you
out for
talk
the
about leadership.
Fredenburg.
Oh boy, watch out. Hey Tish, I want to say something else. I didn't get a chance to share that. I want to share this. So
Yes.
this is not included in the book, but I started this last year. I'm gonna start doing this. I actually did a survey. It's called the R.E.D Leadership Survey. And throughout the year, I gathered about 800 to 900 millennials and Gen Zs from all across the country. And it was people from different cultures. And one of the questions that I asked, I said, when you get hired, what is the number one thing that you desire when you get hired? And the number one thing was professional development. People want to grow in their professional development. And the second question I said is, what is the number one reason you leave a company? The number one reason was leadership. So people are leaving because of leadership, and people want professional development. And ultimately, what this told me when it comes to becoming more effective at retaining, engaging, and developing the next generation of emerging leaders of the millennial and Gen Z generation is, when we integrate this training, when we develop greater leaders, it's going to make a huge impact. They're looking for it. This is what they want. And so if I'm a company, I'm trying to figure out, how can I have more programming? How can I have more professional development? How can I build my people? And one of these, I know the more developed your people are, the better they will be at their job.
Can I just tell everybody right now, here's your training manual. This is your training manual right here. You can break this up into a series of lunch and learns that can go a year long, that can go a quarter. You can take a letter each quarter or each semester, however you can apply it. And then the final one can be just a discussion about how we can begin to bring it all together. Dr. J, I just want to say thank you. I want to give you a round of applause. I want to give you kudos and say, listen, guys, we got some reading to do. We got some work to do. The need is there. The need is there. And we have tools like this that's going to help us meet that need, not just meet the need, but exceed the need.
Absolutely.
Listen, we have so much more to talk about. I know we could do a R.E.D Leadership book launch part 2, 3, and 4 because the conversation was just so good tonight. So, Dr. J, I know you're happy that everyone is tuning in. I know you're grateful for all the folks that are going to take your book home. Tell them how they can get your book one more time.
Yeah, real simple. So number one, I want to let everyone know I made this announcement yet, but I want to give you a free download of the first of a chapter in the book. One of my favorite parts of the book is on transformational leadership. So hopefully Mike got the link and put that in the chat box. I'm gonna give you a free download. If you did not get it, I'll send a follow-up email with that link. But you get a free download. Thank you, Michael. So you can download it literally right now, and you can get some insight on the first chapter. Now, for those that want to order, there's two things I want to make up. Number one, you go to Amazon right now and you can order the book. They'll take care of it and they'll ship it to you. But if you want it signed, hello, if you want me to sign it, go to my website at redleadershipbook.com and order off of my website, and then I'll get that information. When the books get to me, I'm going to sign it and you'll get it. So a signed copy, go to my website. If you just want to get a copy, you go to Amazon, and literally it's available today. So you can get a copy today. I would say buy one for your friend. Matter of fact, buy one for the boss on your job that you know needs to read the information. You know that person that you like, they need this information. You know, one of the things I was sharing today, I said one of the maturities of leadership is to be able to stay calm in the midst of people that may seem like your enemies. And so that person that may be your enemy, maybe they need to read the book. So, like, you know what? I want to be nice to you. I got this great gift to you. Check out the book. Read the book. It may do you some good. So I just want to encourage y'all, if you can get the book, definitely get the book and write a review. Reviews are important on Amazon.com.